Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of the Tommy Christie Show. I would like to introduce my second guest today. His name is Greg Lunt. Greg is a Spaces host, a podcaster, a writer and content creator, and as you're about to find out, just a cool dude. Greg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's awesome to be here. It's great to see you doing this. I'm really proud of you and just, going straight after it. So glad to be here, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah, you got to dive in head first into the pool, right? Like, why would I do it any other way?
That's the best. Is just like iterating violently is kind of what I say in terms of all sorts of content. And that's just trying new things, throw it against the wall, see what sticks. And a lot of people are scared to take leaps into places that they don't fully understand. But truth is, by the time you fully understand something, a lot of times that opportunity's passed or your passion is kind of weaned a little bit from that moment when you thought of it and you had all that energy and ideas. And it's better to just go after it, make some mistakes. No one's going to really hold it against you as long as you just consistently get better.
Yeah. I guess sloppy work is better than no work, right?
I would say so, yeah, especially when it comes to content creation.
hmm Yeah, I totally agree. And so, Greg, while we're on the subject too, there's going to be some listeners to this podcast that probably don't know what spaces are. For those that don't know, what is a space, and what does it mean to be a spaces host?
So a space is basically an audio only environment. Currently audio only. I guess they're going to be adding video, but for now it's an audio only environment on X, formerly known as Twitter, where there's a stage where people talk and there's an audience where people listen. And if you're in the audience, you can raise your hand or request the microphone. You can get called up on stage. And so people hold these conversations. Everyone in the world can chime in as long as you have an internet access and you can get on the X app. You can do it from mobile. You can do it from desktop, and it's the power of human conversation. It's just people getting in a room and being able to express ideas and share knowledge and laugh and do all the things that we do as human beings in a digital environment. And it's tied into a greater social network that is X. And so there's a lot of opportunities to build community, to grow your following, to grow your network and monetize. And been a really powerful tool for me and for other people to kind of grow their brands.
Amazing. So it's just a way for people to digitally connect and have conversations, essentially.
That's right. Yeah. It was built off of Clubhouse. Clubhouse is the original model for this. They invented kind of this format of like stage and audience, and then similar to how Instagram took Snapchat and just
Mhm.
made stories into a feature. They took like the whole app and made it a feature. That's what Twitter did with Clubhouse. They took that whole app and they made it a feature and they named it Spaces, and here we are.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a really I've never thought about the analogy, like comparing it to Instagram and stories like that, but it's exactly what it is. And another question for you too regarding let's like just talk about X for a second. I've got some general topics I wanted to cover with you. Like, why are you so bullish on X as a platform? Like, why is that the main place where it seems like you're building an audience right now?
So it's the easiest to get started, first of all, right? So say, I would say YouTube is probably, if I was going to snap my fingers and just be like, you could have a massive audience anywhere, I would say YouTube. Problem with that is that in order to create a great YouTube video, it takes money, it takes equipment, it takes editing, it takes thumbnail design. There's really a lot of things that go into it from a production standpoint and from an effort and even money standpoint. Whereas with X, you can just start tweeting stuff and you can just jump in spaces and start meeting people and you get the right retweet. And all of a sudden, if the topic's good enough, you can start to go viral. So the leverage that you have in terms of effort to potential result is much higher for any beginner. So I got in there, I started tweeting, I started getting some traction really early, and it became pretty addicting. You also have that real time conversation and reaction and feedback loop from the things that you're putting out. So that's very valuable for people that are trying to figure out who they are, what they want to talk about, or they already know what they're talking about and they want to continue to just feel from their audience like what's the thing that you're latching onto most, what can my product do for you, things of that nature. Of course, you have Elon at the helm, which is he's a proven innovator, and he takes things and he just drives them forward relentlessly. The amount of features and products that he shipped in the past year plus since he's taken over has been very encouraging. They're also going to be adding payments in the summer. So now you're going to start to get paid directly, maybe on a tweet. You can get little tips. Maybe in a space as a host, you can get tips as you're going. You're going to have like a digital wallet where you should be able to pay in real life eventually over the next couple of years as kind of digital assets become more prominent in day-to-day life with your X account. So there's going to be a whole payment aspect to that, which is very exciting if you believe in kind of digital currency. And I'm sure we'll talk something about that today. And I also think that there's a lot smaller account size. Like the amount of people that are on the platform compared to other social medias is actually still quite small, where you have something like on the one extreme, you have Facebook with like 2 or 3 billion people. And then you have X has like a tenth of that, you're at like 300 million or something like that. So you think of it as like or 300 billion million. God. So you think it's kind of like the size of the US versus the size of the world, right? X is the US, where it's like, is there room for expansion? Like, yes, of course. And, we're going into an election year where there's just going to be a ton of breaking news, live content. I think there's really going to find an interesting home on X because of Spaces, because they're going to be adding video. That's even before Elon took over, when something was going down and you wanted to see what people were saying or what was the latest update or whatever, you would go to Twitter. Like that's just what you would do. And now that's even elevated now that you have these kind of audio and video live environments that they're facilitating. And I see that continuing going forward as kind of this central hub, the water cooler of the world, if you will.
So it's several, like to sum up your answer, it's several different things. Like the barrier to entry is lower than any other platform. Like you don't have to have any special equipment. You can just start immediately having, I guess, a direct vein of communication with your audience, like right away, and get direct feedback. You also made the point that it's more of a blue ocean. It's something that's not already stocked full of fish and people. Like there's a lot of room to run, and the fact that Elon has a long track record of, you would use the word violently iterating earlier, that term. It seems like there's nobody better on earth at violently iterating than Elon. Would you say that kind of sums it up? Those are the main reasons.
Yeah, and then the payments and the live content. So those are going to be the things that impact. So like what you mentioned is really like an infrastructural, like the foundational stuff, and then on top of that, it's like, okay, now from a creative standpoint and a real life usage standpoint, day-to-day usage, people are going to be tapping in there for news, and people are going to be using it for payments for creators and outside of the app. So there's just, like you said, there's a number of different angles, and even if one or two of those kind of falters, you have all the other ones. And I think there's just a real opportunity for people that are looking to build personal brands. I think this is a very interesting place to build.
Totally. And on that note, I want to double click on the personal brand point, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people really realize yet. They don't realize why a personal brand is important. Why is personal branding important, Greg? Like, why do you devote a lot of your energy to building your own, and why do you think it's something that people should work towards?
Well, I think most people, if they're being honest with themselves and if they are willing to do the work, would like a life of freedom, let's say, from a broad perspective. So what is freedom? Like, how do you divide that up? Well, there's like financial freedom, there's time freedom, there's location freedom, there's even like maybe like a mindfulness freedom or a mental freedom. And I think that you can get all of these from building a personal brand, particularly the first three, where like if you had a choice, why would you want to work for somebody else if you could work for yourself? I mean, sure, there's pros and cons where, not being the last line of defense, as Gary Vee would say, as an entrepreneur versus an employee, there's benefits to that from a stress level and stuff like that. But the upside for the money is higher. The upside for just getting up when you want to get up, working on what you want to work on, not having to like put in PTO, not having to answer to anybody, getting to like actually build stuff you're passionate about and care about, and that is serving people and that it's your own, and like building a legacy for your kids to be proud of, for your wife and or husband to be proud of, for your parents to be proud of, versus, okay, yeah, you're a cog in a system and you make decent money. And it look, that's for some people, but I would say if you're trying to optimize life for the most free and high level experience, building a personal brand is going to unlock a lot of those freedoms now when you have the internet where people will pay you, whether it's companies that are paying you to promote their stuff or people that are paying you to teach them stuff. Now all of a sudden you have money coming in where, like, right now I'm in Florida because I fucking want to be. I don't live here. My brother just moved into his new house. My parents flew in, my cousin flew in, and I flew in. And I'm still working every day. Nothing stopped. I actually launched, I finished up my launch of my product this week. I did it all from remote location. And there's no such thing as a remote location when you work in the cloud. And that's what personal brand allows you to do, is sell anything from anywhere. And ultimately it allows you to grow personally, because not only are you forced to put out content all the time, and that feedback loop that we talked about is self-evident every single day, where you're forced to up your game, your writing, your speaking, etc. But you also just have this you force yourself to kind of be in these new scenarios where you're challenging yourself and your worldview about, like, what do I want, and if I really have these freedoms, like, where do I end up, and like, you don't just settle for the life that you have.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. And just that there's so many threads to pull there. But the thing that is popping up in my head is a space that I was in with you last week. It was a louder space. Art of purpose was in there, and religion was the main topic. I'm like literally reading the Bible right now. I've never done that in my life. Um, like I read it when I was like a kid because I went to church, but I'm reading the Bible right now because of a space that I was in and the perspectives that I took away from people that I met on X through my pursuits of building a personal brand. So I think radical self transformation is almost like a natural byproduct if you like show up every day and try to get better. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And I found that over the last 2 years, actually, I think tomorrow will be like exactly 2 years since I started posting on X. And the amount of growth that I've had from so many different angles, bro, has been like ludicrous. And particularly, as you mentioned, like the way that people challenge me in a spaces environment, because it's live, because you're like exploring ideas in real time with other people, similar to a podcast like this, but you have multiple angles all at once and there's an audience, and you're forced to crystallize your thoughts into words and into communicating them, and then they get challenged right then and there, and you have that at your fingertips any day of the week, any time of day. And showing up every day on the timeline as well, becoming a better writer. So you're becoming a better writer, speaker. I just launched my first product, having to go through that, like having to figure out all the back end stuff, the email automation flows, using different platforms I've never used before. What is a hype cycle? Like, how do I get people worked up? How do I build out a landing page in the payment processing? Just like getting affiliates and getting them tied in, and networking in and of itself. So there's so many things. I've been coaching for the last 6 months, and when people started asking me, "Do you have any kind of coaching offer?" This is before I did, of course I was like, "Yeah, of course I do," right? Because this is a good opportunity to monetize. So I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And I started, what I first started doing, bro, was trying to like sell people in the DMs. And I was like trying to close them and stuff. And then I was like, dude, this is retarded. Like, I have to get them on Zoom calls.
Yeah.
And then I like found this flow that a friend of mine had been using. Like, there's a system to kind of being a good closer. And I had never done any like in person or Zoom, conversational sales. And so I had to learn that. And this is all in the last few months, dude. And um, and then I meet people like you that like, you challenge me to read more, you challenge me to like think more critically, and I get inspired by the people around me to become a better person. So from a content standpoint, monetization standpoint, networking standpoint, it's like all these things are just every day just firing at me, and I don't have to do anything, but if I want to grow, I do have to, right? I have to step up and meet those challenges and those expectations that the people around me and that my brand in and of itself as an entity demands of me.
That's beautiful. And I think that what underlies all of that too is this: you have to be radically open minded. For me, that's almost like the most important trait that I've seen. I'm not going to name this creator, but we just saw a creator just totally burn out like in public last week, and just nuke his brand. And I think when people lose their open mindedness to learning and and to being receptive to I think what's like most apparent to me online is there's a constant flow of data like at all times. Whenever you log on to X, it's just a constant stream of little notifications, and you see people's impression counts. It's just constant learning if you stay open to it. Like, what role do you think open mindedness plays as a creator in the space that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think particularly on X, I think you nailed it. Like the flow of data is so like lucid almost. It's just like especially compared to other platforms where maybe you have an Instagram or something where it's a similar flow, but it's not as dense probably in sort of information that can impact your life, where it's much more saturated with entertainment value.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, and obviously this depends on your X feed, but where we are kind of in this creator economy, quote unquote, money X, where people are focused on brand building, content creation, personal growth, mindset, monetization, all these sorts of things. Most people are either trying to teach you something or they're trying to give you like a hot take that makes you think and reconsider your position on something. And so we're constantly, the density of those hot takes and those educational tidbits are just pumping, pumping, pumping. And you find that because you're getting hit so many times with alternative viewpoints, for lack of a better term, like in the beginning you might find some resistance to that because that's the natural human state, is to like at some level defend your position, right? And then there's a saying that I really love, and I actually think I want to get it tattooed on my neck, or at least the letters of it, which is strong opinions loosely held, right?
Mm.
And it's this idea that you believe what you believe strongly because it's your current belief, but you're also, just as strongly as you believe it, you're just as open to changing it upon new data entering your sphere and your consciousness. And I love that because that's exactly how I operate. I think openness is the most important thing in somebody learning and growing, is understanding where they stand and also knowing that they know nothing. And so the entry of new data and new positions, particularly from something like X, it's a real tool. And as soon as you turn that off and you say, you know what, this is all stupid, um, I mean, it could be a couple things. You could just change the people that you're following if you really do believe, like, hey, okay, I've considered this viewpoint and these types of strategies, and they're not for me. Okay, well then start like unfollowing people, start liking new things. The algorithm adjusts very quickly, and you can build a different ecosystem or stream of content. And if you're not so sure, and it's just something that's triggering you, like for me, I've been plant based for the last 8 years. And the more people that I talk to, the more I'm like, should I go back? Like, I'm like actually open to it. I'm not in a rush to do it, but I think like, there's guys that I'm meeting that are saying it's changing my health, in this way and that way. And there's girls that I'm meeting that are saying, I want to cook for you and this is how I would do it. And I'm like, okay, all these things, it's like, and then there's like all the lizard people saying, go eat plant-based meat. And I'm like, oh, well, I hate everything they say. So just stuff like that where, that's not a huge part of my identity, but it is a lifestyle that I've lived that I'm reconsidering just because of X. And there are many other things that are similar, but it's this openness that I think makes me feel powerful. It gives me energy, and it allows me to kind of know that I will never get lost in the shuffle of the information overload that is the digital world, because I allow it to enter without judgment. And then I can decide consciously whether or not this information serves me, rather than placing a judgment on it right away and sticking to that judgment.
Well, that's a very mindful approach. That's like the essence of mindfulness meditation. For me, when I sit down and I meditate, I usually do it every day or every other day. I've been way better about it. But when I meditate, I view my thoughts without judgment, non-judgmentally. I just like watch them kind of go by like clouds. So you're suggesting the superior approach to being a creator, or at least your approach, is to just to look at the stream of data without judgment, more or less.
I mean, you have to judge it, but you have to, like you say, to be open to it. I think you should judge it. I think you should critically judge it, but I don't think you should attach yourself to your initial judgment. Like, establish your position and then allow the data to kind of chip away at it. Even if it's not, if that post isn't going to do it, maybe some of the comments will do it. Maybe it takes you 10% of the way there and then you put a pin in it. And then next time that same idea in some form hits your feed, it chips away again. And it's like, but you're not there to just defend staunchly what you believe. You're there to defend what you believe so long as there's not new data being presented that changes that, and that should change that. Like, to be a critical thinker is one of the most important things that you can be in today's world, where it's hard to know what to trust, right? And you have to be able to do the due diligence yourself. So that openness is a key part of that.
I totally agree with that. I think openness is just a prerequisite to, I think, to like your dream life, and like everything that you ever want. You just, like, how can you attract that if you're closed off to it? And I was actually thinking about an exchange that I had on X yesterday with a mutual friend of ours on X, Simon. He had posted something. He like had a meal, and it was like he had raw beef in the meal, and I had noticed a trend on X, on Health X, whatever you want to call it, with all these gurus like Sobra, essentially eating raw beef, like raw ground beef. Like that would be what they would eating. And Simon had a bowl of raw beef mixed with some things. And my gut I don't know why I commented this, but it was because I genuinely held this belief at the time. I said, raw beef is one of the cringiest health trends around. Then he commented back. He said, why? And I like thought about it, and I was like, well, to me, it seems like we developed cooking, as humans, to get more nutrition from our food. Therefore, why would you not cook your beef? And he just made the point that like we eat sushi, tartare, we have all these other foods that we eat raw. Why not eat raw beef? And he made the point that I live in the United States and the quality of our food here isn't as good. And I thought about it. I was like, holy shit. Like, I was like, that makes a lot of sense, and I like commented back to him. I'm like, yeah, man, like that makes sense. Maybe I'm wrong. It's kind of like that attitude, right?
That's exactly it. That happens all the time. And also, I'm convincing people that dogs aren't that cool. You know what I mean? So you can be on the other side of the coin as well, and you could be the one offering alternative viewpoints.
And Greg, okay, now that you just brought it up, let's double click on it.
Let's go.
Why do you die on the anti-dog hill? Like, why aren't dogs cool?
So I think dogs in and of themselves are just fine. I think dogs are nice creatures. I think they mean well. I think they're very loyal. I agree with that. I think that for most people, the vast majority of people, like 80 to 90% of people, owning a dog actually holds you back
Hmm.
and is not a net positive experience. So, yes, you get loyalty and you get unconditional love, which what you say, people say. Um, I'm not convinced that undeserved loyalty, like you're basically purchasing loyalty and you're basically purchasing love for nothing you did that deserved or earned that. And so a lot of times people get dogs to fill emotional voids, whether that's loneliness, in romance or in friendship, just having something around that loves them and it makes them feel good, quote unquote, instead of having to go out and like build themselves up to something to earn that respect from a human being that you can get those same feelings from. It's not a unique feeling that you get from a dog. It's just one that you don't have without the dog. And so it's an easy fix. Are there relationships between men and their dogs or women and their dogs that is incredibly healthy? Yes, I definitely think so. The ones that are out every single day doing grueling exercise, that have a structured discipline and boundaries in their home, and that have affection as the final piece of that puzzle. This is a Cesar Millan framework essentially, which is exercise, discipline, affection in that order, right? And especially in America, you really see a reversal of that in some respect, or at the very least, affection first. And it makes for a very unhealthy owner to dog relationship where you have many things like barking and not being trained well and household trained and not giving respect to guests and like jumping up in their space and just things like that. And that's on top of like the fact that they shit, they smell, they shed, you can't really travel, leave the house without like making accommodations for them or taking care of them, all for this perceived like unconditional love, which I actually don't think is a net positive for, I mean, okay, if you're 70 years old and your husband passes away and you get a dog for companionship towards the end of your life, like something like that, if you're blind and you need a dog, if there's like a real health like issue or whatever and the dog helps, yeah, I think there's like practical uses for that. If you people say, oh, I need it for protection, it's like, yeah, but that's not why you got it, and that's not why like, and the dog is also never like attacked the intruder, like that's just never happened, so that's kind of like a fake thing. So yeah, that's kind of my case, is that people say like loyalty, unconditional love, when I say go and find that from a human being.
Hmm. Based. Okay. That is a very fleshed out perspective right there. One that I know rustles a lot of people's jimmies. You know, like why do you think it triggers people so hard? Like that take.
Because people love the way their dogs make them feel. They're addicted to the same way, like if you break up with somebody and you have like that feeling of like longing for that person or something, or it's just like we have this attachment to the living things that are around us. And so I understand, because when I attack the idea of having a dog, they take it as if I'm attacking their dog. Um,
Yeah.
and also as if I'm attacking them, which I kind of am, because most owners are shit owners, and dogs are a reflection of their owner in every way. If your dog is an anxious dog, if your dog barks, if your dog doesn't like practice, discipline, if it doesn't give people space, like all that's a reflection of you. It copies your energy. It means that you don't know how to communicate with it well. You're a subpar owner. You don't give it the exercise it needs. People don't want to hear that. They just want to have a dog. They just want it to make them feel good, and they
Mhm.
use it for what they use it for. And that's enough for them. And then when you challenge that, it kind of like, it's part of their worldview. Do you know what I mean? And so anytime, and I'm the same way. If people are to come after things, but that I believe in, but and that are part of my life, but like we talked about, is this openness idea. It's just a little bit harder, where I can maybe discard an idea or discard my diet on a moment's notice. Can't really discard your dog, so you kind of have to defend that a little bit more staunchly.
Yeah, that's a legal offense to discard your dog. You know, it's and a moral offense. It's not something you want to do. But yeah, I think you make a lot of good points there, honestly. And I want to veer the conversation back towards audio, content creation, because I'm sure we could talk about dogs for the next 30 minutes. But in terms of uh, you, Greg, something you've been so adamant about, like the entire time that we've been friends. And by the way, those listening, I met Greg in Spaces. Like we became friends on X Spaces, just showing up every day, interacting with people online. So again, this is an endorsement for the power of the internet and the power of X. But Greg, something you're so adamant about is audio. Why is audio so uniquely powerful in 2024?
Well, when you just listen to somebody speak, you are able to soak in much more of, you're able to be more empathic, essentially. You're able to understand what they're saying better. There's less distractions. Like we're talking right now, you're listening to me, you're intently listening, but you're also watching me and you're looking at my facial expressions, and those are giving you additional inputs for you to consider as you take in my message. And so even if it just is diluted the message by 3% or 7%, you're still not 100% focused on just my words and my message. There are other things that are making you think, oh, he nodded to that. Okay, so maybe this is and then you're thinking about that. Like, but if you can't see me, then you
Mhm.
don't have to deal with that. So audio is like this hyper crystallized information download for the listener. It also allows a lot of flexibility for both the listener and the speaker, where like right now we have to be sitting at our computer, attentive, looking at the camera, looking at the screen, fully present. Where if we're just in an audio environment, I could be out for a walk, I could be in my underwear, it doesn't matter. Because it's just about the words and the ideas, not about the visuals. There's science to support this, and I also have just anecdotal experience to support it, as far as my having built social audio products and spent thousands of hours at this point in Clubhouse and in Spaces, and just watching the connections that are made. If you just think about talking to someone on the phone for a long time and just how that makes you feel versus like being on a Zoom call. It's a different experience. And I think there's value in both of them. But I think people ignore the power of audio, or it's not even that they ignore it, they don't realize that there's something special and unique about it. And so with something like Spaces, I've been able to kind of lean into that and showcase that and highlight that for people, so that they understand, like, hey, not only is this a deeper way for you to connect to people, but it also offers you a lot more flexibility, and there's less, again, barriers to entry, as far as like, we have our laptops and our cameras and our microphones, and you're gonna like you have a Riverside subscription and all. It's like, just download X and open up a space, and now you're creating community in real time for, with full flexibility and very powerful connection between the people that are involved.
So it seems like the main utility of audio in a social environment is increased feelings of empathy for other people and the ability to tap in and create strong relationships with others. Mainly, that's what you've observed.
That's right. And it's easier to just create the content and to consume the content. So there's this like all around effectiveness and efficiency that audio allows for. And we've seen it time and time again now. And I'm excited to see like how many more products are built around audio, or at the very least, kind of taking these group audio experiences and allowing us to have more closed, like smaller group experiences, and push us down the funnel of relationship building and networking. Where, like, if we're in a large space and I could just tap, I mean, there's a million different ways to do it, but for example, I could just see you in the audience or see you on stage, and I could tap you and be like, invite to like private call, or invite to like, or like add to group call, and like we could set up a little pod where we go off and we talk about something and return to the main room. Or like the host of the room could say, all right, everybody opt in to the round robin like networking thing, and then everyone that opts in, he presses a button, and now we're all automatically broken off into randomized groups of three. Like things like that, where you can gamify the experience in audio only, where it still protects people's identity, protects people's their visual, where they are in the moment, what they look like. They don't have to worry about any of that, but we still get to like go deeper and deeper to build those connections.
Hmm. That's powerful because I think it's common knowledge these days that video is like the most powerful medium. YouTube is incredibly powerful. That it almost like creates a blind spot to where it's just pure audio. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well? It's more of a blue ocean than video.
100%. And the blind spot is a perfect way to put it, because it's almost like we just jumped over it. And I saw that specifically, in my initial foray into social audio was through a dating app that I built in 2018 and 19. And it was basically just text based, as far as like Tinder and Bumble, the incumbents. You swipe and then it's a text box, and that's basically all you get. And I was like, hey, well, we kind of need like some more multimedia in here to allow people to connect deeper and understand who they're talking to, and form, get a better sense of who's on the other side before we all get dressed up and go out and meet and find that out in the first 30 seconds anyway. We might as well like have some more interactions up front. And I went to video in my head at first, and within about 3 weeks, I pulled it back and started building around audio. And over the course of 2 years of building that, 2.5 years, it was shocking to me how many other dating apps were popping up trying to challenge the status quo, and none of them were doing audio. They were all doing there was only two solutions that people were really coming up with. One was like, let's group people differently. So instead of just like Tinder, it'd be like the Tinder for dog lovers, the Tinder for Christians, the Tinder for vegans, whatever. And then either that solution, or they would go to the communication side where I was focused, but they would just be like some sort of video solution for connecting people. And nobody was looking at audio. And I was really happy to see Clubhouse, although not a dating app, but it allowed people to finally have an audio experience where people could go in and connect. And it really was like the biggest social media that had come out. There's not real in terms of like, every 3-4 years we see like a new one. You had like Facebook in 04, and then Twitter in 07, and then Instagram in like 09, and then Snapchat in like 11, I think, and then TikTok in like 16, and then you had Clubhouse in 2020. These are the ones that kind of really made their mark. Now, obviously, Clubhouse didn't stick around, but that, and really Snapchat has kind of fallen off too, because those got imported into larger social medias, as we discussed. But that audio solution was really the first of its kind. And I see that expanding going forward. Even as we move into like, virtual reality and AR and all this stuff. We've seen Apple Vision Pro come out this week. There's going to be a lot of that that's just audio based. Like, you don't have to turn on even though there will be a visual element to it from a human side, you're just really using the audio to communicate, right? Even if we don't kind of like turn on the facial recognition stuff. So there's more to thinking about and editing and constructing audio from a creator standpoint that I think most people realize.
So it's, in your opinion, massively undervalued and underrated, pure audio.
Yes, I think it can be used way more intentionally than people are using it right now.
It makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I'm just thinking about my own life and how many podcasts I listen to. I'm just a huge audio buff at this stage. Where do you see podcasts moving? Do you think we've seen the peak of podcasting, or do you think podcasting is going to continue to grow, over the next few decades?
Well, we just mentioned kind of this Apple Vision Pro. So imagine, I think there's going to be a lot more live podcast experiences. So there's definitely something to like a recorded show that people can listen to on demand. And I think that will still continue to be the case. But we're moving more and more into live in all aspects of content creation, particularly anything that involves speaking, whether that's audio only or audio and video, like a podcast. And you think about whether it's just me and you, like we're doing right now, but on X Live, like in a space or on the live streaming, or we put on a headset and AR, VR, and we're in some sort of world, and people can just like throw theirs on and join and sit in the audience and maybe like go over close to us, and they could fly around, like, but it'll be like we'll be having a conversation live where we can allow other people to get in. It's like taking Spaces basically to whatever the most immersive level could be. And I think that all weaves in and overlaps with podcasting. It's essentially just conversations, right? I mean, Spaces is just podcasting, but like on steroids. There's more people involved. There's more flexibility there. It's attached to a social media. It's live. So Spaces is almost like an evolution of podcasting. The market hasn't really realized it yet. Podcasting is still very inefficient from a distribution standpoint, so that has yet to be solved. Outside of kind of like really making short video clips and putting them on like TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. That's how podcasts get awareness. But I just wonder if there's more to that as we go forward. And as that distribution and discoverability increases, alongside kind of like this leaning into live content, whether that's like just video straight on, or there's like a digitized, 4D reality to it. I think human conversation will continue to evolve, like how we distribute human conversation, with podcasting being an example of that.
So you're a little bit more bullish, it sounds like, on live conversations versus podcasts. Or do you think it has more room to run?
I just think that podcasting will probably become more live as time goes on. There will still be people that do offline conversations, but I think more and more live content will be the draw, and people will learn to have because then there's a network effect to it, right? And it's not just purely reliant on an algorithm of whatever platform you post it to. It's like, hey, someone's going to share it live with someone. Like, hey, join in here. Like, this is happening. There's just something more compelling. Like, even if you know this, like, if something happened live and then you go watch the replay and you know it's not live, it just doesn't hit the same. There's
Mm.
something, even, and if you think it's live, it hits as if like it experienced it. And then someone's like, oh, this happened yesterday. And you're like, oh, and it's not the same watch. And it's like, why is that? And it's like, we just want to feel like we're on the cutting edge and we know something that someone else doesn't know. And we're watching history unfold in like, we're in the moment. There's like a presence to it. It's a shared experience, right? That's what we crave. That's why sports are so powerful. That's why, concerts are so powerful, is because there's this shared experience that we have and this connectedness that that there are these people actually having this conversation right now, and people are actually also listening to it with me right now, and we're all in this together. And so I think all the content that we create will drift more and more towards live. X has positioned itself as an incredible player in that space. And yeah, so it's not anything that like podcasting versus live. I think there's a real intersection.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking too about like Instagram Live. It's not very cool because it's usually just like at least I never sit in Instagram Live. I think I've watched like one Instagram Live video before, and it's not as interactive. I think that's why it's not as valuable as something like Spaces. Would you agree?
Yes. And we have, I think TikTok Live is kind of similar to that, which I've also never done, but I've seen like videos of, and even X Live right now. It's the same thing. So if you're not familiar, I know you are, but for listeners, like there's spaces where you can have like people in the audience and then raise your hand and come up on stage and everyone gets a turn. Or you have X Live where you can do like these live streams, and it's essentially the same thing as like an IG live where it's like I'm on camera and you're in the chat, like a similar to like a Twitch or something like that
Mm-hmm.
as well. Um, and once they bring video into spaces, that's going to be a real unique experience, and I'm excited to see how people leverage that, because I think what they'll do is it'll be a combination of those two products. They'll merge it into one. It'll be like these spaces on steroids. And whoever's speaking, if they want to, can turn on their camera, and it'll kind of have like a rotating, whoever's speaking, their picture will show up like on a Zoom call. But then there will also be other people on stage that have decided not to turn on their microphone, their cameras. And now you have the visual people that might even be able to do screen shares and give even more from a video, or share a video. We can all watch something together and like watch parties, and I could scroll through stuff and we can do reviews, but then there's people on stage that can just chime in via audio without having to get on camera, but they're able to participate in real time via their voice. And then you also have the audience and maybe a chat box, and there's all these 4 or 5 different ways to experience this conversation in real time, and that's super exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the possibilities are really endless with video spaces because I mean, has that ever really been done on the internet before? Have you ever really been able to do that?
No, it's really, from what I can tell, it's only been like you can get a couple of people on a video, like on an IG live, you can like add a couple people in maybe, but then you still, as far as the audience goes, you just have like a chat. You don't really have the ability for other people to get on stage as essentially becoming like, it's almost like they're also still in the audience in a weird way, but they're just chiming in. Whereas now, like everyone that's speaking is like on the panel, but it's almost like if you're just a speaker, there's a hierarchy almost of like who's the most involved, or who's the biggest, um,
Who's the
like,
most status?
yeah, their status, but then it's also just who's like the biggest contributor to this moment, to this experience. And it's like people that are on video are contributing the most, and then you have a second and a third level, or even a fourth level where you'd have like video, audio, chat, and then audience, just like pure listener, right? Um, and then how do you create the most compelling show? How do you involve people and keep them the most engaged and make it fun? Like it becomes more challenging, and as things become more challenging from a creator standpoint, that opens up more opportunity because less people are willing to jump through all the hoops to make all that stuff work.
Yeah, and put in the work because I feel like naturally pretty lazy creatures, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about, we talked kind of about, as creators and the growth that it allows and it promotes. We're like in a zone, bro, and we talk a lot, so I know you're in the same space as me. Is like we're just we like to find these openings to just go into. Like the fact that you're doing this podcast is a perfect example. You're just like, all right, this and this, these are kind of stagnating. Let's like try to open up another portal here in my brain and my content and in whatever. And so we've tapped into a different frequency that we're operating on where we like invite the work now, right? And we like to challenge ourselves. It's the same as anything. Once you get a bit of momentum, continuing to go down that path and grow is easier. And then once you stop, like if we were to get off, X for a month and try to come back, it would be like, you're not going to want to do the work. It's like, it's going back to the gym after a year. It's like, you're gonna be sore as hell after that first day. You're not gonna want to go on that same cadence that you were going before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really think that analogy is apt. Being on X and being on social media in general as a creator, it's like being on an interstellar, with that planet where they go when the time accelerates, where it's like 1 hour is like 8 years. It's exactly what it's like. If you miss substantial time on social media, it compounds really quickly. And I was actually listening to another podcast last night. It was on Rick Rubin's show. Have you ever listened to his show?
I haven't. I know Rick Rubin.
It's awesome. I think it's called Tetragrammaton or something weird like that. And he had an author on the podcast named Stephen Pressfield, who has written this really famous book, especially in the creator world. It's called The War of Art. And he and Rick Rubin were talking, and Stephen Pressfield made the point that, or he asked Rick Rubin like something that all creators should ask themselves. It's like, would I do this thing if money was not in the picture? And for me, when I started this podcast, I don't care about money at all. Like this would be a really dumb way for me to make money. Like just getting people on my show and talking to them. Like I'm literally doing this because I think it's fun. This is like play to me. I've realized over the years that conversation is something that I get so much value from. When I actually like give myself to the conversation and just listen. I think this is one of the like peak human experiences, is like talking with another human and like really, really listening to what they have to say. What are your thoughts on all that? Feel free to take a thread and pull it.
Yeah, I'm reading The War of Art. I'm about halfway through it.
Oh, nice,
I
dude.
will definitely check out that conversation. That sounds really interesting. And I agree that conversation is, I mean, it comes back to kind of like freedom of speech too. It's like on the same wavelength. There's parallels to it where it's like the only way that we advance as a civilization is through talking out loud, right? Or whether that's just sharing ideas and letting the market kind of throw them back at you and having to reconsider, and we verbally spar, so to say, to find the truth, or it's just sitting down with someone to explore and go deep and then allow other people to tap in and follow along and be a fly on the wall so that they can not only follow along those ideas and latch onto those and agree and disagree with them, but also connect to you by just listening to you expand them and share what you've been working on and what's bouncing around in your head. And there are things I've said today and in every conversation that I do with friends online where it's something I've never said before. And it allows me to explore my own ideas, right? And so there's all these levels from like an individual, personal relationship and a societal level where new ideas getting tossed around is always going to be a valuable and important part of the human experience.
Very, very well said. Yeah, I think it's dialogue. Something I say to Spaces a lot is dialogos. Like dialogue, it comes from ancient Greek. And dialogos, I think it means through the word, is essentially what that means. And I think that's how we figure out truth as humans. I think that's one of the most powerful ways to stress test your ideas, is to sit in a room with somebody, lay out your ideas and your genuine thoughts on a matter, and they'll let you know what they think about it. And I've had my mind expanded so much the past 5 or 6 months being on X and like hopping into these spaces and hearing different perspectives from people, like even exposing myself to ideas that like I know are wrong. I know I'm not going to agree with, and just listening. The idea of the steel man, right, Greg?
Totally.
Yeah, it's like I think we all need to be able to steel man the opposing viewpoint. And I think the world would be a much better place if we all went into conversations with that intent of learning and not judging other people. The thing I wanted to bring up too, Greg, is this is a bit of a shift in the conversation, but it's a little bit personal on your end. So I know your dad, he was a label executive for a major music label. And I know you got to see some really cool stuff growing up, you know, some really cool musicians, really famous people. How do you think being exposed to the music industry at a young age kind of set you on this creator journey? How did it tie into where you are now?
Well, my dad is a creative, first of all. So he was in a band in England in the 70s that had a couple of big hits that ended up having him touring in the United States, which is where he met my mom, who was working at the record label at the time. And so that was kind of, I have a tattoo on my arm of a boom box with and the plug is an IV. So it's
Oh,
kind of like
nice.
music is in my veins.
Hmm.
It's kind of like that's my entire foundation. I grew up with a headset on. I grew up in a recording studio. Literally, my living room was a full-fledged recording studio with all the boards and all the keyboards everywhere and computers for mixing and mastering. And he would have artists come in and record demos. He was a songwriter at the time, and music and audio have been a massive part of my life for as long as I can remember. And my parents are both music junkies. So music helped me get through a lot of times. It helped me explore myself, as I think a lot of us have experienced. Um, Going to concerts, again, staying open and meeting to new people, like meeting new types of people, like at festivals. Um, I never really was like the hippie type. I was more of a city kid. I grew up in New York City, but I dated this girl who was more rough around the edges like that, and she would take me to these festivals, and we would do camping, and I would just saw a different side of life. Um, and that definitely chilled me out a little bit overall and just led me to just see different things. And she was the first person I also connected with over like Eckhart Tolle and just more mindfulness practices. So and we originally connected over music, right? And she was working at a different company. They were a partner company of ours, and every day I would come into the office and we would link up on GChat when people were still using that, and we would trade music. I'd basically send her a YouTube link, and we'd say 1, 2, 3, go, and we would do that all day, and we would just listen to music together all day. And so through her, I expanded my knowledge, and we ended up moving out to the West Coast together. Although right before we moved, we broke up. So we were planning on doing this whole move. We traveled the whole country trying to figure out where we wanted to move. And I moved out there. I ended up moving out there by myself. And my brother and my cousin were out there, and I started building. That was the first time I started becoming like entrepreneurial. And I quit my job, and my girlfriend and I had broken up. I got rid of my apartment, and I went out west, and I started building and trying to figure out how do I make money online and be in the sun? Those are the two things that I really wanted to do. Those are still basically my North Stars, outside of building a family, but just like foundationally, how can I make money online and live in the sun? And I never strayed from those goals. And it led me to starting up a podcast one day, just doing like an audio diary, essentially once a week, just sharing my thoughts from between 5 and 30 minutes and posting it online and having zero audience, dude, and just doing it every week for 2 years, with a gap in the middle. But I did a year, and then I took a break, and I did another year. And I started, that's when I found Bitcoin, and I found, cryptocurrency, and went all in on that, which led to so many opportunities as a creator down the line. Obviously, as a podcaster, that opened up doors. I started the dating app out there, and a couple of years later, which led to all the stuff that's happening as a creator now. And so when Clubhouse came out, that was where I started to really build my personal brand for the first time. Unknowingly talking about crypto in a social audio environment, kind of a culmination of things that, if I'd never really strung it together, but because you asked it, it's like my music connect, everything. It's like a butterfly effect, right? It's like I was so in love with music, and then that led me to a lot of things, but in particular, this one girl who opened up my mind and made me want to move and do all these, think differently, and then I just opened up my entire life experience, which I'm always trying to optimize, and led me to wanting to build a personal brand and be where I'm at now. So I guess it did all kind of stem from my dad being in the music industry and having grown up in a recording studio.
That's epic. So music is pretty much the base layer of all of your entire life, really, if you think about it.
100%. 100%. I mean, literally, my parents met through music, quite literally. So
That's super cool. What was the name of your dad's band?
they were named City Boy.
Just like, so that's a cool name, City Boy.
City
And
Boy. The big hit was 5705. It's a
okay,
pretty good song.
I'm gonna listen to that after after this podcast for sure.
Yeah,
So, Greg, you told me this in the space. You're listed as a credit on a very popular kids pop anthem in the early
that's right.
2000s, right?
That's right. Yeah. I was one of maybe 20 kids in a recording studio yelling, like having a crowd of kids background noise in an Aaron Carter song. Um, it's called Come Get It. Or I can't remember because we had to say something and then they switched it. It was come with, I think we were saying come with it and then they changed it to come get it or vice versa. I can't remember, but got paid like $100 for like a couple hours to just, they were like, all right, and 1, 2, 3. And then we all be like, come get it. And we're all a bunch of 10-year-olds. So I'm technically on the credits for that track. Yeah.
That's awesome. You know, I'm looking. The song is formally called Aaron's Party, and then the parenthetical title is "Come Get It."
Right. So I
So
think we were screaming come with it and then they like manipulated it on the back end.
that's crazy. I didn't know that they had like advanced acoustic technology like that back then. I guess that makes sense.
Maybe they brought in a new group of kids. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, it was released in the year 2000. Wow, that's
Yeah, so
crazy.
I was so I guess okay, so I guess I was probably 13 when they recorded it.
Yeah, that's crazy. So the song, the album release date was September 26th, 2000. Man,
Mhm.
that's dating us right now, Greg. We're quickly becoming obsolete here. I think. No, I'm just kidding. Um, we're in a good spot. So, what are you building right now, Greg? That's something I wanted to cover.
Good question. Well, I just launched my seminar, closed the doors on it 3 days ago, and I'm gonna be hosting the live actual product on Wednesday in 2 days from now. We're having this conversation on February 5th, and I'll be presenting on February 7th. Um, After that, dude, I kind of have like an open slate. Like I'm really going to be focusing on the live stuff. So I have this dating show that I'm doing with Rachel Kennedy called Swiped, which is on X Live, where we basically swipe through Bumble profiles and we kind of roast and rate them and help people like with their public persona online, especially in a romantic sense. And then we're going to be bringing on other large influencers in that space to kind of talk about it. So that's just fun. And I really love working with her. She's a good friend of mine. And then I want to start another show where it's going to be kind of like a podcast esque. I don't know where this will go, bro, but I just thought of it yesterday. I think I just want to call it Talking Shit, and I just bring on people like you and Alif and Turby and everybody else that's in our community that's amazing, and just kind of like have like Talking Shit with Tommy, and then we'll just like either scroll through like different YouTube videos or the X feed, or like we'll just have a screen share where we'll just be like talking about whatever's going on, whatever the hot thing is, and just it's half podcast, half like live stream type thing. Um, and I don't know. We'll see how. I'm always just more about like you, just kind of starting something and seeing where it goes and just changing it every time to make it better. Got the louder spaces that are still going. Um, I'm going to be doing a space with Gary Cardone on Thursday around Bitcoin, so that should be
Whoa,
pretty interesting.
what's
Yeah,
on?
he read. Um, it's at either like 4 or 6 Eastern. I got to double check.
Hmm.
But yeah, he reached out to me during our space that we did with Gia about um, we talked about dating and relationships and communication and relationships. And Gary came in and he had been following me and listening to me for a little bit, I guess. And he reached out during that space and was like, we should do a space together. And we had like an hour call the other day on Zoom and just kind of chopped it up. So opportunities open when you just like put yourself out there and you try and create high quality stuff. People take notice. So I want to, you know, I was working with Atlas for a while on some stuff, and I want to see if I can rekindle that. I wanted to focus on my seminar for a while first, which is based around like helping people get started with spaces. Um, but yeah, man, I don't really know. I want to just go back to the drawing board. I'm really fortunate and blessed and grateful to have the opportunity to kind of just reassess and figure out what I want to do. I have people that care about what I have to say, and that's a huge, huge honor. And I want to make sure that I'm honoring myself and I'm honoring them in what I create.
Hmm. Beautifully said. I think that it needs to be said that whatever you're creating online, it's almost like a cliche at this point, but you have to be intentional. You have to make sure that what you're putting out accurately represents you, and it's something that you're intending like to help with. It's something that you're adding value with. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you about too is like what in terms of like creators on X and creators online, why do so many people just burn out and like quit? I've noticed that a lot of people that I started with are gone, and I only started 6 months ago. Like, why don't you think people last in the space that we're in?
Because they're too focused on the money and the attention. So it's very similar. I look at it similar to like a crypto bull market and bear market cycle,
Mm-hmm.
where like you see all these people rush in at the top of the bull market, and then all the profits go away and everybody disappears and they go back to their normal life. And it's like, well, why aren't they here? It's like, because they weren't in it for the revolution. They weren't interested in how, like, let's be real, like we're all in crypto for the money, but a lot of us are also interested in like, what are the social impacts? What are the, like, how is it going to impact our life literally? And that's fascinating to us. And how does it challenge what we know? And how does it connect me with new people? Like there's a community that's really like forward thinking. So you find like-minded people through Bitcoin. Same thing is happening with the creator economy where like there's these rushes, and I'm sure it'll happen again this summer, dude. I'm sure like people will get excited again, or whenever the next bull run is, where it's like this wave of people come in and everyone's kind of doing well, and they're launching this and launching that, and people are, but it's kind of like a bit of like altcoin season, if you will, where it's like there's not maybe too much substance behind some of the products that are coming out, but people are still buying them because everyone's excited. Becomes a little bit of a pyramid scheme in a sense, not necessarily intentionally so, but just everyone, growth teachers teaching growth, and there's no like hard skills that you're learning along the way. Um, and then when people say, well, I've been dedicating all this time and energy and I'm going all out for 90 days, it feels, because of the accelerated momentum, like you mentioned with Interstellar, it feels, those 90 days feel like 9 or 12 months. And you're like, and I still really don't know what my product is. I don't know, like, I'm not having fun with this. My tweets are getting lower. They changed the algorithm. I'm not getting as many impressions. And they start focusing on these material results versus like, okay, am I getting smarter? Is my network growing? Do I know more hard skills? Like, am I a more skilled creator and contributor to the internet economy in any way? Am I further ahead in my life than I was 3 months ago or 6 months ago? And if the answer is yes, then keep going. And if the answer is yes, but you're also burned out, well, like, start re-optimizing. Like, I do this all the time, dude. I cut dead weight, and it doesn't matter. Like, I cut my podcast, dude. Like, I stopped podcasting. Like, I did 30 episodes and people were saying, this is great. I love this. It was actually starting to get like regular DMs from strangers being like, dude, I found your podcast. It's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I realized that I fucking was bored. And it's like, okay, so I put a pin in it, and it's like, what do we do next? I did that with Louder Spaces too. It was crushing, and I was like, I'm not having fun. Put a pin in it. Um, I turned, so you can always focus on networking. I think meeting new people is always going to give you energy if you put yourself in the right positions. But yeah, man, people burn out because they're focused on what am I getting today, and not what can I get tomorrow if I just stay with this, and how can I, if I am feeling burned out, how can I reshuffle things so that I can just keep moving forward and not stop.
Hmm. So essentially, they're not in it for the right reasons. They're they have no real underlying purpose to be here outside of just clicks, impressions, and short-term validation, as opposed to something longer term.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, the same reason I'm in crypto and I want the money, I want the fucking like, I want the clicks and I want the like the impressions. I want all that stuff. But it's as a vehicle to grow my personal brand, which then who knows how that will take shape. And that's exciting to me. It's like I watch my follower count go up, not just because I like having high followers. It's because I know that I'm going to be able to leverage that to provide and build for the people around me in the long term. That's exciting. And it's like, imagine where you would be if you just started last year, is what you say to like new people. It's kind of like, imagine like, and if I stopped right now, I would look back and be like, fuck, if I just didn't stop, where would I be right now? It's like, I never want to feel that. I never want to feel regret. right? And like resentment for myself because I gave up. It's like you can give up little projects, but you have to keep the overall mission going. You have to build that brand for yourself if you want that life that you really crave.
Mm-hmm. And it's bizarre how simple it is. If you just show up every day, create every single day, talk with people nearly every single day, like you're almost destined not to fail unless you're banging your head against the wall and not iterating like what you're putting out there. It's very simple. And I was actually, I've been powerlifting recently, and like the gym that I go to, I was talking to this guy who'd been powerlifting for like years. He's way stronger than me. And I was just like asking him, he was like, and I was like, what tips would you give me? He's like, dude, just like keep showing up. Like if you just show up every single day for years, there's nothing that's going to prevent you from being like me. And like I think that applies for essentially any domain in life, like really whatever it is. If you just show up every single day with the good intentions and just keep creating, then like you really can't lose, right?
That's the key though, is like the intention. Like, what is your intention of being here? Because
Mm.
I'm not as dedicated to the gym as I should be. And like, but in the last year, I've gotten more committed than ever, but I'm still not where I want to be, where it's like in the beginning, I was really consistent for like a while. For like 4 months, I basically didn't miss a day. And my diet was on point. Like everything was super dialed in. And then I like started to go to like a couple things and like where my shirt was off and stuff. And I felt good. And then I kind of was like, all right, well, I don't really have anything planned for a while. Like I'm going to take a little bit of a break. And
Yeah.
then it was like, oh, well, something else is coming up in a month. I should probably get going. And it started becoming like I was getting healthy and in shape so that I could like look good at an event or something like that. And that's where things get a little shaky because I'm not my why isn't deep enough. Like I'm not doing it because I want to be the healthiest version of myself, for myself, for my family, whatever it will be. And the same thing goes with content, right? It's like the why is it that you really want to like get like a lot of followers and you want to like feel important, or is it because you really think you can help a lot of people if you just keep going and you really think that you can make this into a job for yourself, a career? These are things that if you really want that, you're not going to give up on that easily just because you're feeling a little burnt out or bored. You're going to go back to the drawing board, not to figure out what else I want to do with my life. It's going back to the drawing board of like, how can I create in a way that's more sustainable? And it's a complete reframe. Like if you're going to the gym and you're feeling sore or you're getting injured, it's like, okay, I need to figure out a new way to exercise that's going to keep my body feeling fresh. It's not, oh, maybe I should reconsider exercising as a whole, right? Because you have like a deeper understanding of why that's valuable to you.
Hmm. So I mean that's I think a good place to end the conversation, man. Just tapping into your why, tapping into your purpose. I think if you're tapped into something way deeper than short-term metrics or like money, you can't lose. Like there's no way for you to like physically lose. If you're tapped into something that gives you energy every single day, like you're winning just by showing up every day. If you like it, like I feel like I'm winning right now just because I recorded this podcast with you, because we're just sitting here and I'm enjoying this conversation. Like I love this just for the intrinsic joy of, doing this. And I think we need people that are creating for that reason too. So Greg, any closing remarks for the listeners today if they've made it this far?
Yeah, follow me at Tommy's Writing on X. I'm the best account that's out there if you like photography and writing and being based. So just follow me.
Hey, thanks for the plug, brother. It's been a real pleasure, man. Hopefully you've enjoyed this too, and hopefully the audience, if they've made this far, has enjoyed it as well. And signing out.